All set? Right. Let's call this meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the preamble to the State of Missouri Constitution. We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness, do establish this Constitution for the better government of the state. And now we ask Ted Martin to give the invocation.
Good evening. Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious, loving Father, we thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks, for the rainfall, and for the general beauty that you provide here in the Ozarks. Father, we invite you in these chambers tonight. We lift up this agenda to you as the prep work has been done, the studies have been done, and the discussion will take place here in just a few moments. We pray that you'll have a guiding hand over that discussion, and you'll be honored and glorified. Father, we love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ted. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
McConnell.
Here.
Clontz.
Here.
Simmons.
Here.
Akers.
Here.
Skanes.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Castellan.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my responsibility as mayor under the state law to take care of the ordinances of our city and the state law regarding our city that they are complied with. Under one of our ordinances, Branson Municipal Code 2-64, I am tasked with the responsibility of being the presiding officer of the board and required to preserve strict order and decorum in all meetings. Decorum is often defined by the dictionary as proprietary and good taste in conduct or appearance. And one of the many definitions of order is the state of peace, freedom from confused or unruly behavior, and respect for law and proper authority. In the past, we've had a number of abstentions of votes without proper basis for the abstention. The citizens of Branson elected us to make decisions on policy matters and to make those decisions by voting. We are obligated to vote unless a conflict of interest prevents us from doing so. The common law of the state of Missouri supports this. Although I cannot force any member of the board to cast a vote, and no member can be required to cast a vote, I do have the ability to control the order and decorum of these meetings. As a result, I'm announcing under my authority to preserve order and decorum of these meetings that any abstention by any member of the board during this meeting can be recast as a no vote. We have a speaker's podium. Do we have people signed for the speaking tonight? All right, I'd like to read the speaker decorum. In order to give everyone a chance to speak tonight, I would like to ask, if you're speaking on an item, that you keep your comments succinct to the topic and as short as possible. You will be allowed to only speak once on an item, and please do not repeat what has already been said by another speaker. Once public discussion is ended on an item, the board starts their discussion. No additional comments will be taken from the audience. Please remember to speak into the mic and state your name and address the record. In our own past, we've allowed for an alderman at the end of the meeting, at the end of the speakers, to call someone back up. Please keep the 5-minute guideline. I think now we're ready to begin the public comment, Madam Clerk.
We have one speaker tonight that is signed up, and it's Marshall Howden.
Hello, Marshall Howden, 106 Rose O'Neill. I wrote this speech a few months ago, but held off on giving it due to COVID-19. But now we have implemented drive-through voting, so I can believe now we can do this safely. Quote, "We don't have government by the majority, we have government by majority who participate," Thomas Jefferson. We have a bit of a contradiction in Branson that I don't think is unique to our city, but I also believe that we could be the kind of place that could reverse this. The last U.S. Census that will soon be updated placed Branson's population at 10,520. It is safe to say, therefore, that this number will increase. And yet, in the last election, our mayor received 790 votes to the former mayor's 733, a total of 1,555 votes when you add in the other challenger's portion, which adds up to a total of 14.8% of the overall populace. Now, obviously, some of these folks are below voting age, but with the increase in population, it is safe to assume that number is close to accurate. And that was in an election with two well-known candidates and a lot of notoriety. So I was thinking, when placing my campaign signs, I have to drive down Veterans Boulevard. You cannot go to a live show in this city without them honoring God and country. And our American flag adorns nearly every address. So there shouldn't be a reason why that patriotism and civic spirit can't continue to our elections. Truly, I tell you that I don't know which candidates this might help or hurt, or if it will have any effect whatsoever. But I call on every candidate in the upcoming June 2nd municipal election to promote a get out the vote effort. Let's reverse this trend and get our citizens more involved. Because President Andrew Jackson once said that Americans aren't perfect, but we are called to a perfect mission. Next month, let's show them who we are and put our patriotism on full display. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Ready to begin the consent agenda? Are there any items that any member of the audience would like to have moved down on the consent agenda or ask additional questions or comments? Any items the board would like moved down? Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Alderman minutes of the March 19th, 2020 special meeting, the March 23rd, 2020 emergency meeting, acknowledge receipt of minutes of the Planning Commission study session on March 3rd, 2020, and the Planning Commission regular meeting on March 3rd, 2020. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
So move. Second.
There's a motion. Is it second? Please vote on the consent agenda. There are 6 aldermen present, 6 yes, approved. Under the regular agenda, item number 3, Madam Clerk, please provide information.
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 5782, an ordinance approving the annexation of the property located at 3855 Fall Creek Road, Branson, Missouri. This bill was postponed on its final reading during the March 19, 2020 regular meeting. It is in need of a motion, second, and a vote.
Begin with a staff report from Joe Hornicle.
Mayor, members of the board, good evening. The only update I have to provide on this item is we did receive a document today from Missouri DNR letting us know that the property now is in compliance. And that, if you remember, was the reason we asked for the postponement of this item at the last meeting that this was brought up at. I don't remember that date offhand, I apologize. So with that, staff recommends approval. Happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
You've heard the final reading of Bill Number 5782. Do I have a motion approving this bill? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. Any questions of Joe Hornicle? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Hey, Joel. So could you just elaborate perhaps on some of the DNR issues that were addressed?
Essentially, they weren't in compliance with the permit that they had requested from the state. They had cleared additional acreage from beyond what they had initially requested, and I believe they needed to install some erosion control measures to ensure that silt was not getting into the waterways beyond the property. And again, the documentation that was provided to us, I believe it was dated today, May 12th, from Missouri DNR, stated that they now have erosion control measures in place, and they also had photos within their documentation showing that the water quality was where it needed to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone from the audience wishing to ask? Any other alderman? Please vote. There are 6 present, 6 yeses, approved.
Thank you.
Need to get little flags maybe they can hold up down here in the front where I can see. All righty. We have a presentation now from our 2020 financial update. Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Good evening. I am waiting on my PowerPoint. One second. Okay. Essentially, what I'm going to do for you tonight is just go through the report that we created and some of the assumptions and why we created it. We've had this posted online for a few weeks now, but I wanted to walk you through it and give you the opportunity to ask questions, okay? Okay. What we're going to do tonight is essentially the COVID-19, as you all are aware, was obviously a pandemic that was crucial for the financial health of the city for us to take another look at the financials for 2020. We started some discussions, and we started those discussions right away, and I was thankful for all of the directors. They worked really hard and close together and asked a lot of questions, and this report was really a combination of everybody working together to create this for the city. We established new assumptions for the budget. We developed business support right away. Some of us were still working in the office, and we were getting calls, and we were understanding that there was a need to, I've got it written here, extend due dates for licenses, eliminate penalties for late. And what we were seeing is that it wasn't just us doing some of those things. They were municipalities across the board that were trying to do this in an effort to help assist. And I've got create more advantageous cash flow. Really, this is really for me, net 30. Typically what we do is we get an invoice in and we try to turn it around within a week. Essentially, the invoice gives us a net 30, which means once we get the invoice into the finance department, we have 30 days to turn it around and pay it according to the invoice date. So we put that in order to give us a little bit longer of cash flow time. We also developed the fund outlook. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to get, and I'll walk y'all through this here in just a second. What we wanted to do is we wanted to give you another look at 2020 according to the COVID-19 to show you the outlook for 2020. Keep in mind, this is a forecast. These are built off of assumptions, some that we do know, some that we don't know, some that we're looking to other cities and maybe what they've done, some that it's just depending on tourism at this point in time. So we'll get right into it. Assumptions, revenues. What we did was we came together, some of us as a group, to determine what are we looking at here. We were in toward the end of March at that time, so what we wanted to do was to say, okay, the receipts that we're receiving for March, they're obviously January, so what months do we feel like we're going to be affected the most? Activity period, March through July, is what we chose. And then what we did was we went through that and determined, okay, well, what's this going to do for us? So what we know is what March through July brought in for us in 2019. Actual numbers, we know that. So we developed a percentage of revenue loss. Based on those months of activity and what the year came out with, you can gather a percentage, and that was a 45% tax revenue loss, okay? And so that's what we had to use. We had to look at something that we could substantiate, and that's what we chose to use. And here's where other non-tax revenues, I will tell you that the ones that were more business-driven, we kept 45% reduction. The ones that we could go through and determine, and I'll talk to you about this in a little bit, but the ones that we could determine, say building permits and those things, we would go through and try to develop a worst-case scenario. And the idea behind all of this was to say, what do we think is going to be the worst-case scenario, and what will our financials look like once we put that worst-case scenario into this report? Okay, so here's some more assumptions for the expenditures. We reduced personnel costs. We immediately established a hiring freeze. That was 22 unfilled positions. 10 part-time positions were furloughed. 8 seasonal positions were put on hold, and the raises were frozen. Okay, we cut all capital spending that hadn't already been spent, no new vehicles, no large projects, and we cut our one-time expenditures, which essentially that's what they're for. That's why we separate ongoing from one-time, because in the event of a natural disaster or something like we face this year, those are things that you can cut that won't affect your ongoing operations. We immediately reduced the travel expenses, meals and lodging, clothing, uniforms, supplies expense, education and training, and our subsidies. So those are the assumptions that we used to build into what I'm about to go through with you. And I know I'm going through this fairly quickly, but there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers, and I'll go through it. If you have a question, just let me know, okay? So this is the general fund. And essentially what we did, you've already passed the budget for 2020, and we went off the budget of 2020 and those projections. The departments went and they gave me their own projections. So this is not something that just the finance department did. They gave me their projections of the year outlook based on their budget cuts that they did. So I've named all the departments up here that are included in the general fund: the administration, clerks and courts, engineering, finance, human resource, information technology, legal and planning and zoning, even public works. All of those departments are incorporated in the general fund, and that's how we determined the general fund resorts. We put a graph out here for you, and if you see the blue is for pre-COVID, that's where we would have been, and the red, specifically on 2020, is the post-COVID, and that difference in the swing for the revenues is largely due to the 45% decrease. And then the expenditures, that's largely due to the budget cuts that every department went through and made. Okay, even after we did those cuts, we still will be at a 23% reserve as of the end of the year, which, as you're aware, that did take our reserve down, and we had to dip into the reserve, but that is what that reserve is for. And I was thankful that our reserve was healthy at a time like this. Not a lot of cities can say that, so this is a good picture as far as I'm concerned. Now remember, it is a forecast and things change. So we essentially, to get that 45% reduction, we zeroed out the activity for March through July. So you gotta understand that can't get any worse than zero. However, we've already gotten, for May, we've gotten March activity, and we got more money. Yes, we were down, but we still got money. So you have to understand that this is a forecast, and we're going off of what we could substantiate, okay? This is the Public Safety Fund. Major cuts from the public safety expenditures: capital projects, overtime reductions, debt service removed for the new building, training and travel, okay? And so police and fire worked hard. They got me their budget cuts. We worked with them. And the one thing I want to point out here is the subsidy. So essentially, we reduced the revenues by 45%, but what we tried to do with the parks and with the public safety fund is we did not want to have to cut those subsidies by 45%. So what we did was we looked at the general fund, the parks fund, and we looked at what we could come to a balance between the two funds in an effort to keep both of them up at a level where we needed them to be. We did that with the public safety and we did that with the parks, and it came to 25% for both, and they could manage that in both funds. So we were thankful for that. So the revenues, pre-COVID was 13.5 and post-COVID was 9.1. Expenditures 13 and 11.8. And this is the public safety fund.
Mayor,
Yes.
got a question. Can you hear through this map?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's fine.
What was the reserve in public safety before we took the hit? Were we at 35, 40%?
1 second. Give me 1 second. In 2020, the expected reserve was supposed to be 26%. It took it down to 23%.
And these are no layoffs within the scope of this, or no new hires or refilling positions as well?
Right. We did not do layoffs, but we did do the hiring freeze, and that applied all the way across the board. Yes, sir. Those assumptions apply all the way across the board.
How are we gonna avoid overtime, do you know? Is that just best effort?
It is, and it's based on the directors and how they manage their departments. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is a look at the Parks Fund, major cuts from the Parks expenditures. I will give kudos to the Parks too, and all the departments really. Parks went through, because they're so activity-based, it was a challenge, and they did just a great job. The reductions in the park expenditures are based on services resuming August 1st. So they went through and and you can see all the cuts. And again, I will talk to, the subsidy was 25% cut, which took them down to 250,000, which meant it was 750,000 is their new subsidy. And still projected to be at 10%, which is where the code is. Okay. This is a look at the transportation fund. Major cuts from the transportation expenditures. We did cut capital items. We reduced fuel costs, contractual goods, personnel expenses, and you can read that if you would like. The revenues, $7 million, they went down to $3.9 million. They do have a retail sales tax, and we took that down 45%. And then their expenditures went from 7.6 to 5.6, okay? And the fund balance will be at 18% for that. Water sewer, major cuts from water sewer fund. Again, we tried to do some of the same cuts the directors did all the way across the board, and the assumptions apply to all funds. So capital items, they took out the water tower painting funds, general maintenance, electricity reduction, and they went through line item by line item. And I will just let you all know that this wasn't just a quick thing. This wasn't something that the directors turned in overnight. They put a lot of thought and a lot of investment into how is this going to affect the city for the overall year. So that was something that we got to experience, which I thought was incredible. So the revenues went from 9 million down to 5 for water sewer, and 17.4 down to 13.2 for expenditures. One of the things that we have been seeing, we've been doing water sewer, the billing is in my office, and we've been doing a lot of payment plans, a lot of restructure for them to try to help people who have been so badly affected by this, to help keep them afloat. Here's a look at the tourism fund. Again, we cut capital items, and we cut the marketing expense based on once the taxes are reduced, then obviously the marketing gets reduced, so that's what we cut there. And then the revenues at 13.5, they are going down to 7.5, and then the expenditures from 14 to 8.1. Keep in mind, a lot of the tourism, is a lot of debt still in that, so we still have to maintain the debt service payments and those kind of things. And really, the fund balance will still be at a 41%.
Mayor?
Yes.
Question. Thank you, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
The marketing expense, what's that gonna be, you're projecting that to come down to? I think we originally had looked at 3.2 million or something to that effect. What will it take it down to in your projection?
I am sorry, I don't have the detail for that, but I will get it for you and send it to you when I'm done.
We
here.
assume it'd be roughly 45%?
Essentially, yes. Now, if the taxes come in higher, then obviously they'll get more. But we have a spreadsheet that we maintain, aside from COVID anyway, that when the taxes come in, how much we can release of their budget. So
Thank you.
you're
Excuse me,
welcome.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Baldwin.
Bill, I believe that going in, I think our 2020 budget going into this year, we had reduced the amount for marketing from, I think it was 3.3 million last year. For this year, it was 2.7 projected. So,
I only brought the summaries with me tonight, so I don't have that detail, but it sounds right, but I will still confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is really just the executive summary in which we just really explain it's a short-term financial plan that really was created as a roadmap for the city of Branson, just to give you a view as to where we're at and what we did to try to offset this year and where we would come. Keep in mind that the budget process for 2021 and 2022 has not yet begun. So we've already sent out the process to the directors and the timelines and those things. We're going to start that early this year because of all of this. We did project. What we tried to do for 2021 is we tried to project, okay, let's keep it consistent with 2020. There were a few items that we took up or had to come down as a contractual basis for 20, so it wasn't going to be the exact same as 2020, and we looked at all of those. Again, it's a forecast, but that 2021 will change when we do this next 2021 and 2022 budget process. So keep that in mind. We will still do our best to maintain a balanced budget, but what we need to think about in 2021 and 2022 is we need to think about we need to maintain a balanced budget, but our revenues need to come in higher than our expenditures, so you won't be balanced at zero. You should be coming into the positive to help replenish some of those reserves that did fall below the 20%. And that is my report, and I know I went through that fast, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
At this point in time, anyone in the audience wishing to speak regarding this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak regarding this matter? Mr. Milton.
Jamie, I have a few questions. I understand the public safety tax. What we're forecasting is a 25% reduction in that fund, right?
In the subsidy, 25%.
In the subsidy, yes.
Their tax, we forecasted a 45% reduction.
Are we using the dollars out of the public safety tax fund to put into the general fund? Are we reducing the funds in that account at all, in the public safety tax fund?
Okay, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking me, but let me give it a shot.
Okay.
No, we don't transfer. The only monies that get transferred from the public safety to the general fund are the amounts to cover the benefits of payroll.
And that's
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the graph I sent you, or the spreadsheet I sent earlier, I'm curious on some of these. I'm just trying to understand some of these numbers. What we're projecting, and I truly appreciate projections. We're projecting the tourism fund to be equal 99% of in 2021 compared to what it was in 2019. General fund pretty close, 96% of what it was in 2019. And I'm sorry, that's for the year 2021. But the public safety tax is only projected at 86% in 2021. And so I was just, in the transportation tax was 92%. So I was just curious on what makes those percentages different.
Certainly. So I think you're looking at the difference between the pre-COVID and the post-COVID and
Yes,
that percentage
yes.
and the swing for 2020 and 2021. So I think it was 67% at 2020, based on the graph that you're
Yes.
talking about. And that is because of the 45% reduction and the 25% reduction in the subsidies. And then for 2021, what we tried to do is take the taxes back up a little bit, but we kept the subsidy at 25%. So that's where your swing is. Again, it's a forecast, so it'll all get taken care of in the 2021 and 2022. But the difference between the 2020 and the 2021 is we tried to think about the taxes, bring those back up, and keep the subsidy at the 25% reduction. That's where the swing is coming into play. And so, again, it's a forecast, but does that answer your question, or?
Well, so that 25% subsidy for 2021, maybe what'll help me connect the dots is transportation tax is similar to the public safety tax, isn't it? The
Yes, sir.
percentage? So the public safety tax is at 92% in 2021.
They don't have a subsidy, a large subsidy like the public safety tax does,
Okay.
and that's gonna be your difference there. remember that the transportation fund also has your MoDOT payment did not change, so it didn't fluctuate according to your percentages that we reduced, because that's a contractual amount, so that's
you.
gonna be a difference in your swing.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Do you know what number was used in our forecasting? What number was used for 2020 for the convention center subsidy?
For the convention center subsidy,
When they gave us a report, they were anticipating a $500,000 shortfall. And now with COVID, I'm assuming it's going to be substantially higher than 500,000.
well, we've gone back and forth, you know, we transferred an additional amount of money, I think it was 75,000 earlier this year, 75,000. And we've gone back and forth with them on their projections. But right now, we maintained it at the 260 plus the amount that we've already given them over and above their budget. We did not anticipate giving them anything else larger than the subsidy from the general fund. Now, they still get their marketing dollars, so it's separate funds that assist them, but we didn't anticipate. They told us what their losses were gonna be through the end of May, and we looked at that, and we've talked back and forth with them. We've already given them more over and above their 260 subsidy from the general fund, and so we didn't anticipate giving them any more dollars than that.
Okay, when they presented their budget to us, right?
Yes.
They were anticipating $500,000 loss.
Yes,
And so we're looking at, with the $75,000, we're looking at about, what, 325,000. So they've already, pre-COVID, they anticipated a $500,000 loss. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, and I don't know what their gross sales are, so I'm trying to come up with I don't know what the percentage would be, but it could be $1.5 million, couldn't it, for this year, a subsidy need?
I mean, it's based upon their business, and as that happens, then we will make the adjustments as we go out. So, I mean, essentially, that's what we have to do. I can't right now guess. My hope, as everybody's hope is that we anticipated worst-case scenario, and we're only gonna do better than our anticipations, okay? But I can't put in what everybody thinks is going to happen into a forecast. I could only put in what I could substantiate.
Sure.
And as things get worse, if, Lord willing, that doesn't happen, but if they do, then we will bring it back before you all and take care of it at that time.
Okay, because I'm concerned that's gonna be a big number. Jamie, is it fair to ask that with this forecast, there is so much uncertainty in this, right, with the projections we're trying to make? And as fluid as it is, would it be unreasonable to ask to have this report updated, maybe on a monthly basis, based on new information that we have? We may see revenues higher, we may, I'll go back to the convention center, which, if we start getting numbers from them. So instead of saying, here's our projected budget, and then let's see where we are in December, maybe here's our projected budget, and then here's refreshed based on new information, and refreshed based on new information, so we can have a running tally of what we think will end up at the end of the year.
I tell you what, I think it makes more sense quarterly.
Okay.
And the reason why is because we're in May right now, and we only know March, okay? So it's a 2-month time lag.
Yeah.
So if you did it quarterly, you would have a better picture in 3 months versus next month. It's not gonna change
Okay.
a ton. But if you wanted us to do it quarterly, certainly we can revise and refresh that.
And Larry, just a moment, just to mention something. We haven't been meeting with the finance team, and the finance committee will be meeting in the future. We'll go through a lot more detail. And I think at those point in times, we'll be able to promulgate exactly where we think we ought to be bringing those reports.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Mayor, can I
Yes.
just throw something? And Jamie, Alderman Milton mentioned this, and it has to do with the marketing expense. What percentage of cut did the convention center take in their marketing fund? Is that also looking at that? approximately 45% reduction,
The convention center,
how we market that place down there.
Talking about the 500,000
Yeah.
we allocate.
oh,
300,
okay, you're talking about
500,000.
what we give the convention center.
Yes.
Well, what we budget is 500,000, and we kept that because that's contractual, but we, historically, give them way less than that. So
I just
we
didn't know if
only
there
give
were-
it to them after they've spent it, they reimburse it, they submit it to my office, we go through it and make sure that it's an actual marketing expense, and if it is, then we submit to them their reimbursement within the realms of the budget.
Is there a loss of funds clause in that contract or reduction in funds? If the city sees significant financial negative impact, that we can reduce that amount?
I can't answer that right now because I am not 100% certain, so that's another one of those items I'll
Could
have
you
to
check
get back
for
to
me,
you.
please?
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Simmons?
I don't really have a question, but I've not envied your job here for the last 2 months, and you've been giving us information all along, so this didn't just come about tonight. You're being asked to do the impossible. If you could actually predict this stuff, why, you would be in a much higher position, somewhere over the president. However, you're being asked to make assumptions and to do things that are totally unknown. We all know that we have no idea when the convention center's going to start back. Will conventions come when they do? We really don't know that. So we're going to have to be responding all year long to this. But I certainly want to compliment you and your own force and all of the department directors for getting right on this immediately, for coming up with figures for us and coming up with details and now a summary so that we begin to get this in our mind of where we are. And I'm very fortunate, as you have always been very conservative in our reserve, that we had good reserves, over 30%. And this, like you said, is the reason we have them. You never see something like this coming, but when you do, if you've got that extra cushion of 10+% over your normal reserves, then you're not near as bad a shape as other cities are. So I appreciate what you're giving us here. I'm sure I like the quarterly update. I think that's you kind of have to decide how you can do it as you go along, but I do like that because we need to stay on top of it. So just thank you and your staff.
You're very welcome.
Mr. McConnell?
Jamie, I would echo that. Again, that's why if all companies had those reserves, a lot of companies would be in better shape than they are now because of COVID-19. Having said that, and I agree, maybe a potential thought on the update instead of doing it quarterly, because this is kind of a 5-month picture, and then quarterly you have 1 or 2 updates. Perhaps even if it's just the big picture, very high level. Again, not asking to monthly do a ton of work, but I share the concern. When the convention center was here, I used the term, is there fat in there? Is there, because of the loss. It was such a large number. We were concerned that they were sandbagging was the phrase I used, and I think I offended them a little bit, but I was just saying, are you sandbagging? They said, no, we're not. And I'm just it's left or right for me. Either they were sandbagging and we're not going to have a huge discrepancy, or they were not sandbagging and we will have a huge discrepancy. So that's my only concern. And so I understand I wouldn't ask all of this detail every month, but boy, it'd be nice to know if they're way off. I can't imagine them, if they told you, let's go with the same assumption. I'm not in finance, I'm not in your role, and I appreciate what you do. I don't know how that's even believable, because it was a huge loss. It was $500,000 before COVID, and we've all felt the pain and suffering of that. So that's my only thought. If there's any kind of just real quick update, you could give us just as that's changing, because that's one of the bigger pieces here, I think. And so that's my only concern. But again, I echo Bob's thoughts, and I appreciate you doing this, and certainly glad we have those reserves. But that's my one area of real concern.
Just a quick question for you. Are you more looking at a convention center are you more looking at an update in regards to the convention center specifically, or just a high-level overall view?
So what y'all have done here is great. We've been able to do what most private industry has not been able to do, and that is really not have layoffs because of the reserves and because of these assumptions. My point is, if one of the assumptions is that they're only gonna lose $500,000 and they ultimately lose $1.5 million or whatever, what does that look like to the city of Branson? And therefore, we were able to avoid layoffs, but oh gosh, now what do we do? Where do we find those resources? That's my concern.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And one of the ways, just for revenue, this is not answering your question, but I'm going to just give you this little tidbit. One of those ways that you can gauge really how things are doing is those tax reports that we send out every month. If you look at those and look at the percentage difference, that'll give you an idea of what we're up against. And then certainly I will talk with Stan and John and find out what exactly they want me to do, and we'll do whatever we need to.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Jamie, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Madam Clerk, the next item, item 5.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5809, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Online Solutions LLC, DBA CitizenServe, for a land management software solution and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with the staff report from Joe Hornicle.
Mayor, members of the board, oh boy, are we lucky we had this before this all happened. CitizenServe has been such a great asset for the city. It was wonderful that we could have it live at the beginning of the year and have staff really comfortable with it by March 1st, by April 1st. And so therefore, we as a community have been able to continue to issue permits, continue to do inspections, all while practicing safe social distancing and all the other guidelines. So I wanted to start off with that. This item this evening is to renew their contract. We've had 1 year in the bag and looking forward to a second year. The first year was all the heavy lifting, so it was a cost to the city of $82,250. However, ongoing, we're only going to be paying for users, so our fee annually now will only be $34,200. And that's for 19 users spread throughout 5 departments. We've been able to add 3 separate modules at this point: building permits, planning applications, and code enforcement. Along the way, we actually also picked up records requests for the police department, and we're still exploring other opportunities with Public Works, how we can get other things on there. So I'm really happy with it. Can't say enough great things. Their service, their customer service is second to none. It's been fabulous. So we're really thrilled with it and very much support this, recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5809. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second now. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any of the aldermen wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, sir, I just have one question. Joel, it's 34,200, am I correct on that?
That's correct.
How much do our fees offset that dollar amount by, do you know?
So we started collecting a technology fee the last couple of years. I don't know the exact dollar amounts, but it's roughly collecting about half that amount, maybe a little less than half. So one of the things we're looking at is possibly bumping that up and trying to collect even more. But right now we're getting about, I'd say 40-50% of that through our technology fee.
Thank you.
Any other aldermen? How about the lower reserve area down here? Anything? Okay. All right. Please vote. Six aldermen present. Yes, 6.
Thank you.
Passed. Thank you, Joe. Madam Clerk, item number 6, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5810, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Arvest Bank for purchase card services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is the renewal of our contract for our P-card services. This is the 3rd renewal, and we're asking, we do recommend approval for this. A couple of things I want to point out for this contract is we do receive 1.39% of a cash rebate back for our expenditures, which is fantastic. And we recommend approval for this, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding it. Thank you.
Do I have a motion approving the first reading of Bill number 5810?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Larry? Yes.
Jimmy, how often do we go out for bids on this?
We're going to go back out to bid next year, so we went out to bid, I believe, the end of 2016 for the first of 2017. So it's every 4 years, every 3 to 4 years.
So the process is, we go out to bid, we sign a 3-year contract that we renew annually, and then we go out to bid when that 3 years is up.
We did a 1 year with 3 options to renew. This is the third renewal, and so next year is our year to bid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Please vote. 6 aldermen present, yes 6, passed. Item number 7, Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction for this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5811, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Central Bank for banking services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with the staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We do have a contract with Central Bank. They're our main operating bank. And so we do the same process with them as we do the P card. We send the RFP out, and it's 1 year and then 3 options to renew. This is their third renewal option, and we'll go back out to bid next year. Same process. We do recommend approval, and we're happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5811. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Motion?
Second.
Second? Did you get those, Madam Clerk? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, so just one
Yeah.
quick question. Under the executive summary, it says the contract is no cost to the city. When you throw out an RFP such as this, it's more of a question to throw out to the public to understand what we're talking about. What is the basis of awarding an RFP if there's no contract, spit it out, Bill, if there's no cost to the city?
For banking, more or less fees, interest rate, those kind of things. And essentially, Central Bank doesn't charge us. We don't have a lot of fees with them, and that's what we look at.
Okay.
Please vote.
Thank you.
6 aldermen present, vote yes 6, passed. Item number 8, Madam Clerk, please.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5812, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson to allow the county to provide funding toward the cost of the city's planned 2020 sewer system improvements and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with a staff report from Mike Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Taney County Commission, as part of their 2020 budget, has set aside funding from the county's half-cent sewer sales tax, which can be used for sewer improvements that have been submitted by municipalities within Taney County. This funding is provided for municipality projects that meet capital improvement criteria, as described in the county's tax usage guidelines. Branson Utilities provided information on 8 budgeted 2020 sewer projects that meet the criteria. The Taney County Environmental Service Project Coordinator has reviewed our project scope and has drafted the attached agreement for consideration of approval by the City of Branson Board of Aldermen and the Taney County Commission. If the agreement is approved, sewer sales tax funding up to $1 million will be made available to the City of Branson to be used towards the cost of these projects. Branson is not obligated under the agreement to proceed with any certain amount of our planned projects. As projects that are approved by the board progress and invoicing is received, staff will submit copies of our invoices to Taney County for reimbursement for the cost up to the $1 million limit. We did list out our 8 submitted projects in the detailed analysis. I have bolded the numbers of those projects that could be paid for within the $1 million budget. And we could also do a partial project on the lining that we have previously ran through the board. Top priority of the projects would be the second phase of engineering for the Compton Drive flood analysis, and then some of the other projects. We have either halted these projects that were in place or have not started the projects based on the decision tonight and by the Taney County Commission to approve the $1 million funding agreement. Staff recommends approval of the bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5812. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Obvious question.
I think Larry had his hand up first.
Hey, Mike, on these 8 projects, what's the timeline of getting these 8 completed?
The Compton Drive project would be the longest lead time. Everything else we should be able to get done by the end of the year. We'll have to take a look at the timeline of the Compton Drive project before the end of the year. We have the ability to extend this agreement if we need to. So we'll take a look at that and keep a close eye on it.
Historically, what has been the process? Here, they've allocated $1 million, and then you decide where we're going to spend it, right? Taney County authorizes $1 million.
Yes.
How often does Taney County authorize funds out of their sewer tax?
Annually.
So we have the incentive to wrap these up to get into the pool of next year.
That's correct, yes.
So social distancing for the sewer guys has been lifted?
No, there are definitely protocols in place for.
Just kidding. Thank you, Mike.
And these are reviewed under the Capital Improvements Committee meets. And
Each
we'll
project.
get back into those meetings now that we've taken a hiatus for a period of time, so good information there. All right. Any other questions? Mr. Ray? Bill, did you?
No, sir, he had
covered
the
it?
same question I did.
Okay, all right. Please vote. Six votes yes, 6 present, approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Item number 9, Madam Clerk, please.
Your Honor, this is a first reading bill number 5813, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Gulf State Distributors Incorporated to provide ammunition and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Have a report from Jeff Matthews.
Mayor and members of the board, this is a contract proposal between the City of Branson and Gulf State Distributors, Inc. for ammunition for the police department. The city uses the state bid process. We sent out an RFP for ammunition, and all the vendors are able to apply. And Gulf States and 4 other vendors submitted bids. Gulf States was the lowest and supplies the ammunition, the federal ammunition that we use. This ammunition will carry us through the year. All of our qualifications and training are included in this bid, and the bid is not to exceed $21,500, and staff recommends approval.
You've heard the report. For the first reading of Bill 5813, do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this? Any alderman? Please vote. Six present, 6 yes, approved. Thank you. Madam Clerk, item number 10.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of bill number 5814, approving the renewal of the memorandum of understanding between the Missouri Department of Public Safety pertaining to the Law Enforcement Support Office Program and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
Staff report, Jeff Matthews.
Mayor, members of the board, as she said, this is a memorandum of understanding between us and the Department of Public Safety. It allows us to secure excess Department of Defense equipment through the police department. It's a force multiplier for our budget, and this is the annual renewal of a 10-year of a project that we've been doing for about 10 years now. Staff recommends approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5814. Do I have a motion approving the bill? Second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Mr. Alderman
Anything you
Skanes.
have your eye on and all that equipment yet, or?
No, in this inventory, you really have to watch it daily because it comes and goes pretty quick. So we have nothing on line right now.
Any other questions? Please vote. Six present, yes, six, approved. Item number 11.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5815, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Under the Wire LLC pertaining to traffic signal maintenance services for the city and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with the staff report from Keith Francis. You guys are getting good at swapping places, aren't you?
You bet. Mayor, members of the board, this is, council bill is for our signal maintenance contract. On January 14th, we had two bids for this, Under the Wire LLC and Ewing Signal. This contract's for 2020 is a one-year contract that runs through the execution and approval by council through December 31st of 2020, with an option to renew it for up to 3 additional successive one-year terms. The renewal contract will be presented to council on the renewal each year. An estimate of $16,750 is budgeted in the Transportation Engineering Department operating budget. Staff recommends award of the contract to Under the Wire LLC and not to exceed amount of $16,750. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5815. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, sir.
Bill, I think you were first, then Larry.
Go ahead, Larry. He may have the same question I do.
What is the, in 3 sentences, what is it that they do?
Our traffic signal maintenance all around town. We have 16 signals around town and 4 ped crossings, and they do the maintenance on those for us that we can't do. Their bucket truck is a lot taller bucket truck than ours is, and sometimes we have to utilize that to do the maintenance on the signals.
And the maintenance is the bulbs, checking wires,
Oh,
fuses?
the big silver cabinets you see at the big intersections,
Yeah.
that's nothing but a mass of computers and wires and everything else in those things, and terminals, connectors, and we just don't have the staff and expertise to do some of the work on it.
Good enough, thank you.
Yeah, but we do everything we can in-house. We have trained personnel to do that, so.
Thanks, Keith.
Alderman Skanes?
Yes, sir. Keith, is this money dispersed up front, or is it done in,
No, it's at an hourly rate.
okay. As they perform the task, they bill us and we pay?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Please vote. Yes, 6. There are 6 presents. Passed. Item number 12. Madam Clerk, please.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5816, an ordinance accepting the proposal of All Sealed Up Sealing and Striping LLC pertaining to the asphalt seal and striping Ballparks of America parking lot and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Have a staff report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for the parking lot ceiling for Ballparks of America. This includes all of the parking space striping that you see on the parking spaces. Now, a lot of the external striping we will do in-house. We've done that and opted to do that. We can save a lot of money doing it our own self for painting the curbs, things like that, ADA symbols. They get approximately $100, $150 to spray paint an ADA symbol. We can do it a lot cheaper than that. and there's several of them out there, as y'all probably already know. But anyway, this is for that contract and all sealed up striping. The low bid was $35,634. Staff recommends approval of this and be glad to answer any questions. Funds are available in our transportation budget for it.
Okay, you've heard the staff report from Keith Francis. Heard the first reading of bill number 5816. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved. Second.
Second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing? Yes, Alderman Clontz.
So Keith, on this, as I recall, the agreement was that the city would be responsible for half of the cost, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so does that mean that we would be responsible for half of that bid, that 35,000, so 17,000, some change, or?
Approximately, and what has happened here, we've done a lot of the pavement repairs out there. The pavement was heaved up in spots and just completely fallen in. We had to do a lot of dig outs. Normally, a contractor would get $80 to $150 a square yard to do a pavement repair like that, to dig it out, put base material in, come back with asphalt. We've done a lot of that in-house ourselves, saved a lot of extra money. And so and Chris, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but they pay up to $25,000 of costs, and we will bill them for our work that we've done out there with our own staff.
Correct.
So that means that we've,
I don't have all my costs in
Right,
yet with
right,
all of
with-
that because I don't have all of our painting done yet and striping. And as soon as we get that done, I believe they're going to probably hit their maximum 25,000 mark. Because right now, like you said, it would be half of that plus what cost we bill them and invoice them. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Milton?
Keith, would you run that by me again? I know in our agreement with ballparks, and maybe I have it backwards, we agreed to pay up to 25,000?
No, that is, the agreement states that we split the cost with them on the repairs for the parking lot.
Not to exceed 25.
They don't exceed 25,000 on their end of the deal.
We split the cost, they're capped at 25, we pay whatever
Yes,
the
sir.
difference is.
Yes, that's correct.
And does this number reflect the entire parking lot, or is this just a portion of?
Everything that's asphalt up to the end of Pat Nash Drive there, where Pat Nash Drive enters the mall area or ballparks area, that's where the sealing and striping stops.
Okay,
Yeah,
so with
it
us
does not
doing,
include Pat Nash Drive, though.
so with you doing some of the painting that yourself, we made out like a bandit on this.
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
With you doing some of the painting in that, if we were gonna pay half, it sounds like we're paying a lot less than what we had thought of when that contract was written.
Yep. That was the whole goal of it, to try to save some money on this project, and that's how we could save money, is
Very
doing a lot of
nice.
the work in-house. So,
Good job. Work half a day tomorrow. Just kidding.
Okay. Any other questions? Please vote. Yes, six present, approved.
now, on this one, I'm gonna have to direct this to Lisa, so she can guide us through it, because I'm asking for a double reading on this tonight.
Okay?
Just because we're under a contract deadline date to get the parking lot done for them, so they can open up for ball playing and everything.
Request an alderman then to make a
Here.
motion, please.
Your Honor, I move to read Bill number 5816 for its final reading due to time constraints in the ground lease agreement with Ballparks of America.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Please vote. Yes, six present, approved. We just approved going for a second reading. Madam Clerk, would you provide the description, please?
Your Honor, this is a final reading of Bill number 5816, an ordinance accepting the proposal of All Sealed Up Sealing and Striping LLC pertaining to the asphalt seal and striping in Ballparks of America parking lot and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
You've heard the final reading of Bill number 5816. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Please vote. Yes, six present, approved. Item number 13, first reading of Bill number 5817. Madam Clerk.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5817, an ordinance approving a second amendment to the contract with Stone Ridge Carpet Incorporated, DBA Stone Ridge Flooring Design, pertaining to carpet replacement and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Have a staff report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, this is for a time extension only on this contract here. If you recall back October 2nd of 2019, we took bids for the carpet. Then on accepting the bid, executed for November 12th and not to exceed amount of $21,000 with an ending date of December 31st. The contract amendment at that time was through June the 20th of this year. Due to the COVID outbreak and our budget crunches and everything else, to prolong putting this on, hopefully we'll start getting some tax dollars back in. We asked them if they would approve another time extension, and they did through December the 1st. So we will do everything we can, and hopefully we can get the carpet in the second floor walkway area, and the third floor is what this is for. So hopefully before then, we can get the carpet installed if we have, money in the budget. They do have the carpet on their warehouse floor over there on a pallet right now, so the material, and if we can't get it put down, we may have to pay for the material, only or something like that. So, but they're very good to work with so far with us. This is for a time extension only through December 1st. I'm glad to answer any more questions.
Do you recommend approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5817. Do I have a motion approving?
So moved.
A motion? Do you have a second?
Second.
Second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Alderman Milton?
Keith, was there any thought of, due to COVID and our finances and a lot of uncertainty, was there any thought about maybe extending this to see what this disaster we're in, how it pans out? And just not spending the money now until we have some more certainty?
What it is, the carpet manufacturer, where they buy the carpet from, gave them a time extension for the COVID outbreak also. So they were able to give us this same time extension to get them paid, basically. So they don't have to pay the carpet manufacturer, so kind of a domino effect down to us. But as far as getting out of or voiding the contract, I'd have to ask Chris I don't know if we can do that, really. Chris may have an answer for that.
We were already into contract prior to this. This vendor's been very gracious with us by even agreeing to allowing an extension based on this. So we're kind of in a position where, number one, we've already appropriated the funds. Number two, this board has already approved this expenditure to go put carpet in. So we went back to the vendor and said, hey, even though we're obligated to you, do you mind? And they've been very gracious to do this. So it's one of those situations where this occurred prior to this whole COVID thing happening.
Right.
Any other questions? Yes.
So what would it cost us if we have to restock this, if we have to pay a restocking fee?
I think back 2/3 of that cost, that the $21,000 is material cost. It's broken out in the bid back here. Find it right quick. Oh, restocking fee. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, I don't know about the restocking fee. I'd have to call and ask about that. The labor was a total of $6,359. Material was $14,652 of that. So $14,652 would be what we would have to, if we buy the material and stockpile it ourselves somewhere. I hate to do that with carpet, but
Any other questions from the Alderman? Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Approved. Thank you, Keith. Item number 14, first reading of Bill 5818. Madam Clerk, please.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5818, an ordinance approving the sale of real estate to Rodriguez Real Estate Investment LLC and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with a staff report from Chris Lebeck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. This is actually opposite to what we've been doing to this point. This is the city actually making money versus spending money. What you see before you on the overhead is a piece of property that's part of the old airport property that the city owns. It's actually a roughly 25,000 square foot chunk that sits underneath part of the Botana's Mexican restaurant. You can see the corner of their building hanging over it. Currently, the city leases this property to Botana's and the investment group behind it. We make a roughly about $8,000 a year. It's tied to prime rate, appraisal, some other things on that property. What this is giving Botana's the opportunity to purchase this property for the appraised price of $88,000. An independent appraisal was done. Reason why they want to purchase this is they, even given the current situation our country is in, they want to expand their restaurant and specifically their kitchen. This gives them an opportunity to, and the comfort knowing that they own the land underneath the property that they're going to expand their restaurant on. So that's what's before the board today. Happy to answer any questions.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 5818. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second has been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Yes, sir. Alderman Clontz.
Just a quick question, Chris.
Sir.
Why the double read?
Double reads for two reasons. Number one, their closing date is June 2nd. We have a little bit of legwork to do between now and then. Number one, we need to get this over to the title company to do a full title search. This property is a little bit, I'll be polite, a little bit shaky in that title search process. The second piece is there's a survey needing to be done. We need to do what's called a minor subdivision plot, where we're going to basically take that chunk off of the old airport property, attach it to Botana's property so that's properly recorded with the assessor's office over in county, and all the tax components line up. So there's a little legwork between now and June 2nd. We don't want to be in a situation where if we do the second read on our second board meeting at the end of May, where we're really under a time constraint to get that done. Thankfully, Mr. Jasper over at HDR Engineering has been agreeable to do the surveying for us on a fast track. And Mr. Hornicle, who's not in the room today, has agreed to help expedite this through the planning department as well. So we just want to give ourselves enough time to meet that closing date.
And Chris, if I remember correctly, we, in appropriate closed session on discussion of real estate, approved this in a closed session to be brought to the board. Is that true?
That is correct, sir.
Any other questions? Alderman Milton, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Skanes?
I had a question. This $87,000, what fund does that go into?
It's 88, and I believe it'll go into the general revenue. Jamie will honk at me if that's incorrect.
Chris, you had mentioned that this, and I'm just surmising what you say, that the title on this was a little shaky.
Well, we've got a situation here where we have, number one, there's a bankruptcy sitting over on top of the what was formerly the Red Roof Mall property. We have a lease sitting there. We have a number of other, we'll say, interested parties in that property. So I want to give the title company enough time to make sure that the due diligence is done properly.
The cost for us to sell, stating that seller pays the taxes, general, special, all assessments, are there any costs to us as such?
Yeah, that is a good question. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Roush just emailed me. It actually goes into investments, not the general fund.
Okay.
That's some good
right.
social distancing right there. Thank you, Jamie. As far as costs are concerned, the only costs that we have, which I've talked to Mr. Alderman, who's the attorney that's representing this group, is the cost of the surveying and the subdivision plat. We've agreed to split that. That's just a couple $100. So basically, we're gonna spend about $100 to make $88,000. But again, the flip side of that is we're losing the lease revenue.
Thank you.
Alderman Milton, excuse me, McConnell.
Close enough. I would share just my concern, Chris, with Alderman Clontz, in just that we typically do, and I know Bob doesn't like double reads typically either, but we typically do the double reads so the public has the opportunity to hear about it, not just coming from executive session, but so the public has an opportunity to kind of ask questions about that. So my only concern is, and my question for you is, if we do a single read and then we bring it back, it's just up against the wire. Any possibility for them to just extend a little bit on the closing or something like that? I feel like if we do this, I don't know that it rises to that level for me, and folks don't have I'm personally excited about getting out of the real estate market when we can as a city. So I love it, but I'm sensitive to some of the concerns that others have as well.
I'll say this much, it is what it is. It's your all's decision, to use a Ms. Roush term, y'all. Bottom line is, if they have to push the closing, they push the closing. I think they've been chasing this piece of property for quite some time. Again, it is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes, I would just like to agree with Alderman O'Connell. In this particular case, I don't feel that we've given the public, we've known about this in executive session, but I don't feel the public has known about this, and so I will be against the double read. I'm certainly for the sale of the property for the price, but I can't buy the double read.
Fair enough. I'll talk to Mr. Alderman about that, assuming you approve it.
Any other questions? All right, it's time to vote.
What are we voting on?
We're voting to whether to proceed with this
The sale.
first reading.
The first reading and first sale.
First reading.
Okay.
Now, there's a couple more pages here that deals with it. Yes, 6. 6 present, approved. All right. I need an alderman to make a motion if you want to go for a second final reading.
Your Honor, I move to read Bill number 5818 for its final reading due to the need to close on the property.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There's been a second made. All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to address this item? Dr. Klontz.
So I agree with Alderman McConnell, Alderman Simmons. I don't see the sense of urgency and the need to go to a double read on this.
Alderman Milton.
I'll just echo what Dr. Clontz said. I'm in agreement that I don't see the urgency.
Now you have a chance to vote. Please vote.
Oops, I hit the wrong button.
Something didn't register anyway.
Yes, 1 vote, no 5.
Let the record reflect the one was a mistake. Yep, that's the mistake.
Well, this is where we can correct it, Larry, if you'd like.
I'd love to correct it.
You want to revote?
Yes, please.
Madam Clerk, how do we do it?
Well, can an alderman ask, another alderman ask that we allow the correction or allow another vote?
We'll have to put a motion on the floor.
I make the motion to re-vote.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote on the revote. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
I'm pushing buttons.
Are we voting on the revote?
Yes.
I have 5 responses.
Come on, Larry.
Recast their vote. We did a voice vote. We did a voice vote to allow it, right? And now we're voting again on whether. Well, you just asked for.
That was not me.
Yeah. There are 5 yeses and 1 no.
Who's the no?
It passes for 5-1, and the votes are there.
That was to revote.
Bob Simmons, yes. Bill Skanes, yes. Rick Castellan, yes. Brian Clonch, yes. Larry Melton, yes. And Kevin McConnell, no.
So we had a voice vote and a.
Now we're ready to revote.
Perfect.
Now we're voting.
Now we're gonna vote again on,
Okay, we're re-voting, or voting on if you want to go on to a final read or not.
You ready?
please vote. No, 6. 6 present, failed. All right. Going over to item 15. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the information on this item?
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5819, an ordinance approving the 2020 through 2021 property liability and workers' compensation insurance coverage and premiums paid to Connell Insurance Incorporated with property liability coverage through Tokyo Marine HCC and workers' compensation coverage through Missouri Employers Mutual Insurance Company, MEM, for the City of Branson, authorizing the mayor to execute the document related thereto.
Again with a staff report from Jan Fisher.
Mayor, members of the board, bring you to you this evening. We want to continue insurance coverage with HCC and MEM. They've been good for us this past year. As you can see in my staff report, overall premiums are up overall, up to the tune of about $50,000. A lot of that stems from the fact that our workers' compensation claims are up. It increased from an experienced mod of 1.18 up to 1.26, which is a fairly significant move. However, claims for up through 2020 so far are down from 2019. So we're doing better, but the individual claims seem to cost us more money. But all things considered, we're recommending that we move forward with that. You know, we've got one ally right now, Jody Stanton, who's the physician assistant over at Cox Ahmed, has been one of our advocates with working with our employees and helping them identify their issues and helping them get on the road to better health after an injury at work. But all in all, staff makes a recommendation that you approve this bill. I'll answer any questions you have.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 5819. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Motion and a second's been made. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Alderman McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. Jan, quick question for you. I know when we, on the HR committee, we were going through this process of selection, there was some software, I believe, that was training related. And I think that was it sort of identified to help with, you know, to avoid injuries, or it was training related to make sure that everybody's trained and stuff like that? Has that sort of been, how's that panned out? Has it been fruitful? Has it helped?
It's actually worked out pretty well. It's been the platform for a lot of our training, specifically with supervisory training and safety training itself. That's on the staff report. That's the very bottom item that you see as far as the risk mitigation, that $500 fee.
Okay.
And it's worked out quite well for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Yes, Alderman Clontz.
Just a quick question on, I see where a large jump there is that increases in the workers' comp premium. And it looks like you must have had some increased claims in workers' comp.
We look at a 3-year average on the claims, and we've got the 2017 year is our big year that we had. We had 500,000 in claims that year. For next year, hopefully, or year after next, it should drop off. So, but we're still feeling the effects of that.
Any other questions? Yes.
Tell us how that works as a group here. You may see it go up, and it is because of significant number of injuries, and you've worked to mitigate that, and that starts dropping down. What point in time is there a lesser cost, or does it stay there?
Well, our goal is to keep allocating resources to the risk mitigation side, the safety training, helping everybody go home safe at night. The primary thing, though, that we run across is injuries, joint injury, knees, shoulders, things like that, that are slips and things where it becomes orthopedic in nature and it requires surgery. Those are the things that we have a hard time determining and guarding against, that they're the one-off kind of thing. Like I said, our number of claims for those kinds of serious claims are down this year, but the cost per are fairly significant still.
Any other questions? Please vote. Six present, 6 yes, approved. Now report time. Alderman McConnell,
Nothing to report.
Alderman Klontz,
Nothing to report, sir.
Alderman Simmons,
No report.
Alderman Skanes.
Yes, sir, just a quick point about the issue of workers' comp, not workers' comp, got workers' comp on the mind after that large increase. The issue that we've been having to deal with at the state for unemployment insurance has been remarkable. I want to pull my hat off to our staff at the state and local level that took these home and managed the entire UI system out of their bedrooms and their living rooms and their dens. The whole thing was done off that, and the system crashed several times. But I think that's to be expected. I understand our offices will open up again on the 13th to the 15th so that the people can access those offices directly. I don't know what the governor is going to give us as far as restrictions on the number of people in there, but those offices will be back open, and hopefully we'll be providing services back to the citizens of the community as quick as we can. That's all.
Alderman Milton,
No report.
Alderman Castellon. Administrator Dobbins.
Yes, sir. Just real quickly, we wanted to let you know that applications for open board positions, finance, capital, and all that will start on May 22nd and run through June 19th. We always encourage anybody in the public that would like to serve on one of our boards, please, you'll see them on our website. I encourage you all to become part of the community, even more so. We appreciate everybody that does that. And last, I would like to thank you guys for putting up with us over the last couple of months. I know it's been difficult. I know it hadn't been easy. And I would also like to express my gratitude to every department head and the finance department as well for all the hard work they've put in. It's been wonderful to see it and be part of it. So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. My comments are in regard to this community, and I really appreciate the cooperation between the chamber, between the health department, between all those entities that are stakeholders. The hospital's been very, very helpful to us. The medical facilities here are just, they're excellent, and they're good people involved in it. There have been 5 areas of concentration. The chamber put together task forces to meet to talk about reopening Branson. And the cooperation and the creativity of that group of people trying to figure out how to get things open again has been extremely good. The 2 reports today, those were all due to us. You'll see them, I think, now on our website. All those reports and recommendations for the particular industry, whether it be retail, restaurant, attractions, and so on. So I encourage you to look at those and see what this community is trying to do to continue to have good results. Obviously, we begin to see a few people. The reports this morning showed in retail area particularly, there were several people in town. It may have been mostly our local markets that came. They had good Friday, Saturday, and Sundays of the shops that were open. They're opening up gradually, and that's working well. They seem to be in agreement that that was going to be the best way to get Branson back going again. And I think the governor used an example of you don't just flip a switch, it's a gradual dial, and that's what's happening. And I'm encouraged by the cooperation and the folks who get it, who are seeking to protect our citizens as well as the folks who are coming to visit us here. With that, get ready to have the opening of a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Second?
Alderman Castellon made the second.
Then call for a vote. 6 present, 6 yes. This meeting is adjourned.